Hi, everybody. It's Steve Pemberton, the Chief Human Resources Officer at WorkHuman. And by now, you know this is our Keeping WorkHuman series where I have this great opportunity to talk with guests about a lot of things that are revolving around the world of HR. And today, I am pleased to welcome Steve Cadigan to the show. Steve is a talent hacker, so we're going to learn a little bit about what a talent hacker actually does. And he's the founder of the Cadigan Talent Ventures. He spent his career striving to understand the future of work and its effect on our organizations, which is having quite an effect in these times. But his insights and his expertise are more than welcome as we continue navigating towards a better way to work. Steve, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you so much. Doing well.
Where's home? Where are you coding, as it were?
Well, I'm COVIDing today in San Diego, California, beautiful San Diego, California. And fortunately, there's not a lot of wildfires here yet. But California, as some of you may have heard, is in the midst of a firestorm season right now.
Yeah, so you use the word "yet," which is rather sobering for you to say. "Yet" is any sense that things are unfolding, or is it just watchful waiting?
It's tough. We've been in a drought for a period of time here, and there's not as much to burn in Southern California as there is in Northern California.
Right.
But it could hit here, and I think it's tough because a lot of people are obviously sheltering at home right now, and air quality is a concern for some folks.
You know, never have we ever wanted to time travel more so we can just get out of 2020 at this point. Yeah,
Yeah, I heard someone say they want to redo, or someone was doing like a 5-star rating for 2020 and barely gave it a half a star. Yeah.
So do you remember when we had the millennial coming and it was Y2K and all the fear and the anxiety of what was going to happen? And it occurs to me that 2020 was what we were worried about back in 1999. Because it's been just one thing after another.
Yeah, it's interesting that that was an ominous time, right? Everyone was concerned that all the software programs had been written not to account for something other than a 19 in front of the year, and we didn't know what was going to happen. It turned out to be just a rounding error. But I also remember around that time I was living in Singapore as the head of human resources for Cisco Asia when SARS broke out, and we were expecting the birth of our first son. And suddenly, and it was just the epicenter of that was outside of Hong Kong, which was not too far from where I was living. And to see, like we're seeing now in a way, a leadership experiment on a magnitude we've never seen before in terms of how people are responding to changes. And, it's just an unbelievable time that we're all facing right now. And I think the only upside, well, there's a lot of upsides to consider, but there's a lot of challenges too. It's the worst job market of our lifetimes. And but we're all learning to have to adjust and be agile and adapt. And isn't that one of the most valuable skills for the future? So that's a little bit of the silver lining. But I was asked recently to give a graduation talk to the University of San Francisco School of Business. And they're like, Steve, you need to be inspirational. I'm like, inspirational? This class is graduating into the worst job market in our lives. And so I thought about it and I thought, well, gosh, not only are we all having a crash course on agility and adaptability in every dimension of our lives, but we're also being given an opportunity to see what companies are really made of and what leaders are made of, because it's really in the tough times where people's true colors show, and in human resources, Steve, we get to see that a lot is how do people stand up? How do cultures stand up when they're put under pressure? Do people really behave the way that they espouse, in times like this? And it's been a fascinating, not just in organizations around, but in countries, in states in America, for example, right? Everyone's taking a different approach.
There was a time in my own career where I thought this whole conversation about culture and leadership was, to be honest, a bit overrated. And what I remember thinking at the time that you get to a certain point in your career journey, and everybody kind of knows what leadership is, and everybody knows what culture is. And boy, was I wrong. Because when you see a lot of breakdowns, it's almost entirely connected to those two things, leadership leadership and culture. But you're seeing this from two different lenses, two very different times, two very different nations, both in Singapore and now here. Are there things both that are that are unfolding as are unfolding here that you're reminded of, and are there ways out of it that you're reminded of?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. I mean, the experience I had in Asia was fascinating because what I realized at the time, and it's very true now, is there's two real crises going on. One is a pandemic, and the other is panic. And panic is harder to manage than the pandemic because it's unpredictable. And what is more, I guess, more dramatic now, more sharp in how it feels is just the amount of how little we really know about what is really happening, relative to the spreading, relative to potential cures that are on the horizon, relative to if I have a symptom or don't I have a symptom, am I a carrier? Who's a super spreader? Who's not? And fortunately, in SARS, that didn't carry. It didn't port to people as fast as this virus is. So now we sit with trying to manage and a future which was already uncertain thanks to technology, and the future work was really going through a lot of changes before COVID hit, and now we have this on top of it. And we already had a workforce that was feeling greater anxiety and depression, and now we have shelter in place, and it's magnified a lot of our, or disabled, I should say, a lot of our ability to sort of step back and stay calm and try to see this as a marathon, and not a sprint.
That's a sobering reality, and there's a longevity to this now. What's the way forward?
Well, I think that part of it is
how is work moving forward, or how can it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Steve. Right before COVID, I was nearly complete with a book on the future of work, and I, like everyone, stepped back the first night of shelter in place and said, "Oh crap! Is all the work that I've been doing going to have any value tomorrow? Is COVID going to change the future of work so much that a year of my life is not going to serve much value going forward?" And every one of us is asked, am I in a vulnerable industry? Am I in a place where like food and beverage right now? Oh my gosh, just devastating, right? On the other side, if I'm a recruiter in the healthcare services industry, I've never been busier, right? So we were all trying to figure out how that looks. I think it's hard to predict what's going to stick and what's not. A lot of people think, oh yeah, work from home is definitely going to be here. Prior to talking to you, I was listening to a radio show that said the commercial real estate, the biggest market in the world is New York City, and they think it will be 30% post-COVID compared to what it is. So, I think that the way forward in terms of the future of work is clearly our comfort level has got to rise with working remotely. Clearly, with COVID, post-COVID, we're going to have people more comfortable, managing and working remotely. We're hopefully going to get better technology and better comfort with doing it ourselves. And, I think part of the challenge is going to be, how do you define a company culture when when the definition of what a company is transforming too? Like, it's not brick and mortar anymore. It's my home, your home. And we have greater visibility to interior decoration than ever before among our coworkers. But I think it's going to be, leadership's going to be different. We're going to have to be more intentional about higher touch and more communication with people, and finding ways to be creative with the limiting technology that we have, right? Virtual happy hours, virtual, humor events. One interesting experiment one of my friends ran at a company called Mobile Iron was, trying to replace the water cooler / coffee room / foosball ping pong tables, where informal connections sometimes create really good opportunities for people to build relationships or iterate on a problem. And they did this experiment where they had a company or an employee-driven chess tournament. Like, hey, let's do a chess tournament. And what they found was something incredible, that the chat box in the game room where people were playing chess was active. New people were, colleagues were meeting each other for the first time. Someone in engineering was running into someone in product or marketing saying, hey, what are you working on? Sharing ideas. And that was a very hopeful experience that was relayed to me by one of my friends, that he's like, well, maybe there's a new market here where we can build games inside the enterprise that support the fact that we can't do that in person anymore. So I think we're gonna hopefully come out of this with better ways of engaging in different ways, so that we can have maybe enable diversity more, enable more geographic diversity of teams, and that would be a good outcome if we go that way.
That would be the gamification of culture, as you described with that virtual chess tournament, is an intriguing one. And it is what happens on the foosball table, the ping pong table, those kinds of organic interactions, the hallway meetings. Hey, Steve, how's the family? How you doing? What are you up to? Oh, hey, want to put this on your radar? Those kinds of things that are important to culture. I wanted to get your thoughts about what is this kind of transition, right, in this world of work, as you talked about. In essence, that COVID's accelerated a lot of anxiety that workers are having. And what was this before COVID that you feel was at the source of this and remains at the source of it?
Yeah, great question. I believe that what we were experiencing prior to COVID was a recognition that the employer-employee model is just fundamentally doesn't fit the current reality of work, such as, I'm going to commit to stay in your company a long time. You're going to commit to offer me a job for a long time. And we've been working under this false, set of rules that don't fit now. And the truth is, employees have more power and more choice and more voice and more, we were seeing wages rise and we're seeing unemployment down prior to COVID, but we're also seeing Gallup tell us that active disengagement was rising. And so that's what really drove me to sort of head towards trying to discover why, with all these reasons why life should be great as an employee, is everyone so actively unhappy? The highest rate of active disengagement since Gallup has been measuring it and publishing it in the 2000s. And so, what I started to do and trying to understand, like, what's really at work here, what's driving that. And I think there's a few things. One is having more choice doesn't make the choice easier, it makes it harder. And in theory, people should be making the best career choices of their lives because they have more information to decide where to go work. I can understand the leadership history, the culture, the recognition rewards program. I can see testimonials. But what I also see when I start is what I don't have more than ever before. And so I think that was driving some discontent. And so, I think now we have even more uncertainty. And the problem is not just with employees' visibility to choice. I think employers increasingly have less visibility to the future. They know less about what skills they should be hiring for. And employees have the same problem. Like, what skills should I be building? And it comes down to, I saw a video by a gentleman named John Seely Brown. He was the former chief technical officer and CEO of Xerox PARC Research, which in its era was cooler than Apple, Google, Facebook combined. And one of the things that John Seely Brown has done in the last 10 years of his life is dedicate himself to understanding education. And one of the things that he said, which really helped me make sense of why we have this anxious world of work right now for employees, is that he said the shelf life of a skill, the value of you using that skill and making money off of it, used to be 50 years, and today it's 5 to 10. And so you think about that, we had this model where I go to school, earn a skill, I'm good to go. It's going to ride until I retire at 65, 70. Now I need to relearn skills. I'm going to work till I'm 80 or 90, and I got to keep learning new stuff. And that's uncomfortable. Fit the model that I thought was going to be the path for me. And I think that's been the root of some of the anxiety. And now we've got, COVID has now exposed, businesses that were low profit margin, and don't have a lot of runway in front of them. Boom, they just can't last. And so Now people are going to refactor, oh gosh, what is a safe place for me? Like I was seeing all these unicorns disrupt all these big businesses. I was seeing the most revered, iconic company in the history of America, GE, do a complete face plant in this century, losing $800 billion of revenue, or not revenue, I should say market cap, the biggest fall of value in the company, that every business book, every HR book that was writing about best practices was quoting GE. And so,
Absolutely.
boom. So now here we said, like, so what is safe? Like, what is safe? Like, Uber is killing, the taxi market. Airbnb is attacking the hotel industry. Like, where should I go? What should I work? What's safe, right? And so that's causing the anxiety, and it's only been amplified, I think, because of COVID.
So if the world of work, and I'm looking at this from the worker perspective, almost suggests that we have to assemble like the Swiss Army knife of skills. There's a sacrifice to certainty and stability and normalcy that you enjoy when you say, well, hey, the assembly line is the assembly line is the assembly line. It was that way for my grandfather. It's that way for me. It'll be that way for my son or daughter. Well, Swiss Army knife like approach to skill development. How do you reconcile that with the human need, it seems to me, for stability?
Right. I think my answer to that, Steve, is going to sound pretty overly simplistic, but let me explain. I think we've been looking to measure our careers based on having job security, and I think if any company today promised you job security, would you believe it? Number one, no, because no one can promise that in an uncertain world, and I can't promise you that I'm going to stay a long time. So what I think that the reframing has to include is that what we should be offering employees today is career security. I can't guarantee we're not going to have some disruptor unicorn come and take our business, but I can guarantee that while you're working here, I'm going to make you better and more viable for an uncertain future. I'm going to teach you new things. I'm going to give you new experiences. And that's what I believe our comfort is going to have to come from the fact that, we shouldn't be chasing new skills. We should learn the ability to learn, and faster, and learning agility, learning velocity, growth mindset. These are really important concepts that I can't offer you a promise that you'll have a job, but I'll promise no matter what happens here, you're going to be better tomorrow. And that should make you feel a little safer. And so I think we have to change the notion of what careers look like. And I think what job security looks like into more career security, and I think we're going to see more of that. Like Spotify is a really interesting company, for example. They're requiring people to move every 2 years in the company. Not every single job, but most jobs you have to move. And we've always known job rotations are valuable, right? It gives you peripheral vision and you can see more. But what I love about that strategy is it's feeding learning. Like, I think people leave companies now, not just because the pay isn't good or I could get a promotion there faster. It's because if I go to another company, I'm going to meet more people. My network's going to grow. I'm going to learn new things. I'm going to be in a different culture with different leadership style. I'm going to become more valuable. So we've seen this, and this is what caused the anxiety. Was we've shifted from safety used to be staying, now safety is becoming moving. And if you talk to boards of directors or senior executives, that's scary, because we've all been paid in HR to reward, hey, what's your turnover? Is it really low? And now I'm looking at that like, I'm not sure that's the right thing to be going for. Like, I think I want to keep my best people, don't get me wrong, but nobody I speak to thinks that turnover is going to go down. They're only seeing it's going to go up. And right now, between the ages of 25 and 35 in the US, the Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us that the median tenure is 2.8 years, the median. So you've got, and that's non-farm worker professionals, right? That's shocking. How do you build culture in under 2 years? How do you build coordination? Yet, when we look at some of the highest value technology companies today, Apple, Oracle, Facebook, Google, Twitter, even Uber, the median tenure in those companies is under 3 years. So they're creating enormous value in a high velocity environment. And I think that's leading me, Steve, to get to the point where maybe we've overvalued tenure. Maybe we've put more of a value on that. And maybe we've underappreciated new people and new ideas and new ways of solving problems gives us strength, right? And so maybe it's something always fighting against that we should allow or maybe even organize to facilitate, which is a little bit of a radical concept. That's part of why I call myself a talent hacker a little bit. So you just try to shake people and say, okay, so you're still trying to keep people for a long time, Mrs. CEO, but you don't think anything you do is really going to fundamentally change that. How about we build a different model that accounts for people leaving? Like, for example, the consulting industry. The consulting industry is fascinating because their whole model is come here and then please leave. And the better job you get, the better I look. So, and the more I can bill, the younger my staff is, So it's a model that works where, and the other model, I don't know if any of the listeners are basketball fans. I'm a huge basketball fan. If you look at what happened in college basketball the last 20 years, it's a story of complete reinvention. Mike Krzyzewski had 4 years to build a team with a freshman all the way to senior, and they would stay 4 years. Today, the best players stay a year, or really 9 months, a school year.
He was, as you know, and he was a great resistor to the one and done.
That's right. And
so
now,
this issue, right? He had no choice ultimately.
Yeah, I didn't know that he was a great resistor, but I love the fact that last year he had Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett, and Zion Williamson, appropriately named Zion, the incredible, like arguably the best talent on the basketball court today. Once he gets healthy, hopefully gets healthy. But so that's phenomenal. Like, he's got to build a world-class team every 9 months, and he's had to lean in, and he's had to say, I'm gonna have to build a promise of recruiting you, because you're going to have a better 1 year here than anywhere else. And I'm going to make your future better if you come here. So even if you don't make the NBA, our alumni can become coaches, can become, analysts, can do so many different things because we've got the best alumni network. So it's an interesting shift that they've made, that they're selling life after. Come here only for a year, and we'll make it the best year of your life because we've got a great culture. We're all about winning and so forth. And I think there's a lesson there for businesses, right?
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I mean, I want to ask a bit about culture now, because that, this kind of 9 month, kind of rebuilding. I mean, it's longer than that. The company is a 2.8 that you referenced earlier, but it doesn't place a certain kind of higher calling on the culture and reminding, defining, affirming what culture is for what appears to be a lot of turnover.
Right. And that, I think, is going to require organizations, when they think about culture, to include, we've always had, customer first, trust, honesty, integrity, and so forth, are usually pillars of most organizations' culture in one way or another, however people express it. And I think what we're going to have to start to shift towards in this reality is that we're going to be a culture where we create value really quickly. We're going to be a culture where we incorporate you and have you up and running fast, and that you feel energized. So here's just a quick snippet of my LinkedIn experience. I was the first head of human resources at LinkedIn. I was there for shy of 4 years. We doubled our population every year, 400, 1,000, 2, and 4. And we doubled revenue every single year. The average tenure of my population the whole time I was there was 9 months. And yet in 10 years, that company built a value of $26.2 billion is what Microsoft paid. So our culture, although we espoused, honesty, integrity, humor, results, these elements, and it was really important to us to know what our values were and be clear on that. But our culture really was about career transformation. We're going to make this the best job you ever had, whether you're here a day or the rest of your life. It's going to be the best thing you ever had. And that helped fuel, the reality that it's going to change and it's going to be different. But our power in our culture is adaptability, right? And I think that's going to have to necessarily be a part of what COVID is going to force on every culture. I mean, what company culture hasn't changed because of COVID? How you communicate, how you organize, how you structure, it's all different now. And it's a great time. Now is a great time for people to take on big cultural changes because everyone's having to live a different reality, right? And so the openness is there because everything's changing already. So let's rebuild better, right? And this is sort of like the big narrative we're hearing from a lot of leading companies right now is build better. Take advantage of this time. Play offense. Don't play defense. Don't hunker down. And by the way, in crises is when you can build trust more because people really see what you made of. So just leverage that opportunity to sort of grow, hopefully, into something different. I mean, I spent a lot of time with these big companies. Oh, we can never change the culture. It's just so rough. It's just like a diamond. It's not going to be able to change unless we hit it really hard. And all of a sudden, now the conversations are, wow, maybe we can actually do this really differently, which is a great opportunity for human resource leaders, especially, right?
Well, there's certainly a lot of conversation speaking of culture, about diversity, equity, inclusion, as this kind of opportunity to play offense, to rebuild, or to build again. Spent a lot of time in the D&I space before becoming CHRO, and I've been having, as you might expect, a lot of conversations. I know you have too, about this issue of equity specifically. So, would you see this kind of build better as an opportunity to build something better around equity specifically?
Man, I sure hope so, Steve. I mean, gosh, I spent all my career trying to advocate for diversity, and everyone's like, "Oh, we just want to hire the best person," which is the knee-jerk response, right?
Sure.
And I spent 5 years of my childhood in South Africa. My dad's a minister. We got kicked out of the country because he was a little bit too radical for the apartheid regime. It's been a big part of my life experience, and what I feel now is the diversity of our circumstances hopefully elevates the shared awareness and appreciation that this is the path forward. Like, it's not a nice to have, it's a necessary. And I also think that we're seeing more and more stories as we go through COVID of how a more diverse framework of staff and people is actually a more profitable investment. And I think we've moved from the diversity agenda based on guilt and moved it towards, because it's the right thing. We need to do that, right? And I'm working with one organization not too far from where some of your folks are, outside of Boston, called Filtered. Filtered is building an application process whereby candidates apply without using their name, a photo, or any of their education or work credentials. It's purely a technical test based on your aptitude. And what they've done is they've gone into 5 companies, and the first thing that they do is say, show us everyone you've rejected. Then they go approach the people that were rejected, ask them to go through these tests. And every single time they find you let someone go because they wrote something on their resume that didn't resonate for you, or they didn't have a college degree, or they didn't include a title of, even though they performed the role, they didn't have the title. That we've got a chance, I think, to leverage technology through this better so that we can diminish some of these implicit biases that we all carry. But yeah, I'm super hopeful, that we can elevate the conversation and really get us to a better place, and I think the fact that a couple things driving in addition to COVID. So the current White House administration's view towards immigration is going to force fewer international students to come here, and the lack of visas or the way that the government's playing on and off with the H-1Bs right now is making people very nervous. So they're likely to go to school and or work in other places. And Canada, in Silicon Valley, has billboards everywhere. Come here, we'll take care of you and give you a work permit. So you've got that forcing talent. I still think American organizations are going to draw the best talent. It just may not live here. And that's a real loss for us. A real loss for all the businesses that those people are going to spend their money in, and all the real estate they're going to buy, and so many other things. It's a real loss. And those people are going to stay in other countries, and they're going to build great businesses there at some point. So, I feel pretty firmly that we have a better opportunity now to be more diverse. I just think the U.S. is going to lose out because of the way we're approaching the whole immigration conversation.
Yeah, and it's almost casting a bit of a blind eye towards the history of immigration, and I generally feel this about, Steve, a lot of things that are equity related. So much of the conversation is anchored in that which is adverse, unconscious bias, discrimination, harassment, and you miss the whole other depth and dimension here about how there is this very, very short walk between innovation and diversity, because when you navigate the world differently, it logically follows that from that comes a different way of seeing a problem. Now you bring that to a team setting, and someone says, "Okay, well, listen, that design will be perfect if consumers were all men, but they're not. And since
Right.
you didn't have women on the team, you kind of missed this blind spot." That was my experience at Walgreens.
Yeah.
It wasn't born of bad intention. I mean, I don't think you had people who were saying, "Let's build a product that is deliberately discriminatory." It was
Yeah.
just lack of that innovative mindset that comes from experience. That's the table. That's true for the immigrant experience and disabled experience and LGBTQ experience. So building better relative to culture and diversity, hopefully will create this world where I see equity for you as not something that is going to take or diminish me. And that's the part that we've really kind of missed, that we're going to have to recalibrate. In Canada, I think it was Trudeau who said, "Look, we didn't get it. We're not perfect, but the one thing that we absolutely did get right is that we did not allow us to subscribe to this idea that equity for one group meant pulling away from another." And that's why we've had a little bit more success. I'm hopeful that because of demographics, cultures, and things they're talking about, that we too will shift, not just build better, but shift better. Because I think we got to shift better first. Yeah.
Yeah, well said, Steve. And I think what I hope that this is. I think we've done ourselves a disservice in HR by doing things like saying, "Well, you're the diversity officer, and it's your job to sort of set the bar." And no, everyone owns that, and everyone owns it in every dimension of the company. And so as soon as you park it with somebody else, it sort of relieves me. Okay, I'm just gotta check the box. We hired the diversity person, and I think that there's better ways of helping leaders, and maybe it's even in the school systems where we just start seeing that diverse teams create better outcomes, and so that's where I hope it goes. Like there are tactics you can take, and companies are paying millions, in some cases billions of dollars, to try to do the right thing here. It's a big market, I think, to try to help organizations. But I'd like to see, like I always ask people, like, tell me the best companies that have figured this out. What are they doing? And it's like crickets. We need to have some real examples to hold up out there. As I said, earlier talking about basketball, I'm a big sports fan too, and it's fascinating to me to watch the Washington football team, how they're going about the whole discussion, because it's all and we're seeing this in the States right now. Statues are coming down, and schools are getting renamed, and so forth, and language matters and symbols matter, right? But I feel like we're still here, and we got lots more to do.
That we do. We're all on the journey, as I like to put it. Well, Steve, thank you so much for this time, for this conversation. Tell us the state of the book. Where is it? When's it coming out?
Thanks, Steve. Book on the future of work for employees, employers. I hope to literally, the screen behind this Zoom is got my final draft in it. I'm a master procrastinator. I should get it to my publisher in the next week or so, and hopefully it'll be available by the end of the year. But I, like everything else, the production channels for book industry have slowed a little bit. And the irony in all this is that Amazon has deemed books non-essential. So that's not fast tracking. New books aren't fast tracking to their site like they used to. So I may have to be my own Amazon Prime and figure out distribution. But yeah, I would love, when I'm done, I would love to come on, because a lot of the nuggets in that book I shared in our conversation, and I'd love to be more intentional about that, a few months down the road, if you're kind enough to invite me back.
Open invitation. Love to do that. Probably have you be joined by a couple of others as well, because even with the fast tracking, hopefully by the end of the year, we're still, as we now know, we're going to still be wrestling with this. You consider that an open invitation from WorkHuman, Steve.
Great. Well, listen, thanks for the work you're doing, Steve, at WorkHuman, and it's been a pleasure to be here with you today and to work with you and your team.
And the same. We'll talk to you soon.